Good morning. I was at the camp for 2 days out of this week speaking, and every time you say good morning, you have to do something. Is there camp people here? Yeah, they're like, no, because they don't want to do it. But it was great because I said it 3 times, and it's this long, drawn-out thing that you could tell they just didn't want to do. Yeah, and it's that for like 3 minutes. So for me, it's like even worse because I'm just like. But it was fun. I enjoyed doing it. But I will say that speaking at the camp, speaking in front of children, kids, teens, is the toughest crowd you'll ever speak to. Because humor is lost on them due to the need to not look weird. So when I speak and I try to make jokes, they all just stare at me like, don't make any eye contact. No. This girl's looking at me. I can't laugh. But it was fun. It was great. Anyway, we are in the last message of our pop culture controversy series. And actually, next week, we'll be starting a brand new series called Numb, which I'm looking forward to. It's about the things in our lives that we just lose track of. It's about the things that we just kind of forget about and we don't really take care of anymore. And we just become numb to certain features and certain aspects of our lives. So I'm looking forward to that. That's our next 4-week series. And then after that, we've got another one coming up called Dirty Laundry. So it should be some really good series. Like I said, if you're interested in those specific ones, you can check it out on the app. We have them all listed. And I'm going to try and get our sermon series for the rest of the year up on there so you can see everything we're going to be doing up until December 31st. So today we're in the last message of our series, and we're talking about our place in this world. We've had some messages over the past couple weeks that have looked at specifics and have looked at things in our lives that can be considered controversial, things that we have divided sides on. So I think in general, we kind of need to look at those things because that's a very small portion of pop culture. In fact, pop culture is a very small portion of culture as a whole in America and in the world. So those sort of things are impacting our lives daily, and those sort of decisions we need to make and those things we need to look at go beyond the 4 messages that we had on politics and music and fame and fortune and movies. There's a lot more. So kind of to generalize this, where is our place? We can look at the specifics, but where is our place in the world, and how does that change as we go forward? What are we supposed to do here? Here we are in the middle of Iowa, not in the middle, we're in the corner, but it's in the middle of nowhere is where we are. And it's like our culture is all around us. What you experience when you go to Walmart is the Walmart culture. What you experience when you post things on Facebook is the Facebook culture. Here at Iron Ridge, we have a culture. And pop culture is one piece of that. So how do we look at all of these things, movies and music and the internet and whether or not we're using Snapchat or whether or not we're reading this or we're listening to that? What's our place in the world? What are we supposed to be doing here? Now, you've probably heard it before. It's a very famous slogan, and in it, we're kind of divided. And this is where the controversy comes in. You've probably heard it, in the world, but not of the world. Now, the problem with that statement is not the statement itself, but it's that we tend to use it as a weapon. We tend to look at certain things in the world and say, well, that's the world, and you shouldn't do that. And funny, the things that we usually condemn are the things we personally don't like. So we start to look at the world we're in, and we start to wonder, is that good? Should I do that? Should I go there? Should I hear this? Should I listen to them? And then we go back to this statement and we go, well, we're in the world, but we're not part of it. So we start to fence things off. Next thing you know, we've got little Camp Brian. We don't let the things in we don't want to, and we only let out the things that we think other people need. Camp Brian's not a fun place. It is at home at 12 o'clock at night when I'm doing whatever I want. But Camp Brian, Camp You, when you fenced off the world that you live in, is restrictive. People see that and they come up to the wall and they go, well, there's no reason to go in there because we're in the world and we're not of it. And then people don't see us as relevant anymore. And we pick and we choose, and we see all of these things. Churches in general have picked certain things to outlaw. We found things in the world that we think are inherently bad. And we go, well, if you want to be part of this, you need to avoid those things. Churches have condemned dancing, and Christians have condemned dancing, and Christians have condemned music, as we talked about, movies. And there are some churches that say you can't go to sporting events. Why? Maybe there's too much of an influence there. I guess if you're a Packers fan, you shouldn't go to sporting events. What's funny is I don't follow football. I just know that'd make you laugh, so I said it. And our phones, technology, things like that, people say, nope, don't do that. That's not good. If you want to be a follower of Christ, get rid of that. Don't go to movies. Don't dance. Don't drink. Don't go to sporting events. Don't listen to rock and roll. Then you can come to church. Then you can be a good person. Then you can follow Jesus. But we need to understand some things about things. First of all, it's this. All things are amoral. Now, amoral is different from immoral. Immoral says that what it is and how it affects me is negative. And humans are the only thing that has morals. Nothing else in this world has morals. So everything else is amoral. That means inherently the object or the thing or the creature has no moral tendencies. None. So I can look at the telephone and go, that isn't morally wrong, and it isn't morally right. Movies, in and of themselves, aren't morally wrong or morally right. However, when humans get involved, we can screw things up. If you look at these things up here, you look at the phone and the technology and the internet, all three of those things, that is not morally right or wrong. It's how we use them. Dancing is different. It's not morally wrong, but it is when you do it a certain way. Same with rock and roll, depending on what you listen to, like we talked about last week. It may be bad once we've influenced it ourselves as moral beings. But music, in and of itself, the instruments that are used are amoral. There's no moral tendency there. So what we need to know is that the potential for evil is in us, not in things. And we outlaw things. Like I said before, you put up those walls. You make Camp Brian all about the things that you want to experience and all the things you don't want to experience. Go outside those walls. And we pick things that in and of themselves are amoral, and we say, that's bad. That's wrong. If you want to be a better Christian, a better follower, don't do that thing. But if we understand that the evil and the potential for evil is in us, it changes things. Because then we know that we take those things that are amoral and then we make them immoral. It says this in Matthew 15:19. For from the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, all sexual immorality, theft, lying, and slander. It's saying that from the heart, from inside of us, those are what cause those things. When we see things that we think are bad, it's because we've done it to it. It was good before man got involved. But the potential for evil comes out of our heart, and we have to guard that. So, in the world, not of the world, what does the Bible say about that? Well, I can tell you this. In the world, not of the world is not in the Bible. That statement by itself it's not in there. Just like cleanliness is next to godliness. That's not in the Bible. If you find it, let me know, because I like that one. But in the world and not of the world is not in there as that statement. It's not in the Bible. But there is some verses that have been used to make that statement because the statement in and of itself is true for the most part based on the verses that it's used when it made it. And these are the verses right here. Do not love this world nor the things it offers you. For when you love the world, you do not have the love of the Father in you. So the first thing we do is we read that verse and we go, do not love this world nor the things it offers you. Okay, great. Let's get rid of it all. So we start taking things, we start throwing them away, and we say, well, this is the world, this is the world, this is the world, and you throw that away, you get rid of that, you don't go there, you don't say that, you don't sing this, because that's part of the world. So you start to clean yourself up because you read the verse and it said, do not love this world, do not love the things in it, and you start to get rid of things. Now the problem comes in what we interpret the word world to mean? Now, the world is used a lot in the Bible, and it's used to describe a couple different things. And those things are this. God's creation talks about the world and what God created. That's the world. Talks about the people who inhabit it, and they are the world. You also hear them referenced as worldly. And those who reject or ignore God is the primary reason that people use the world. So if you think about that word, if you think about the world and that we're not supposed to love the world, and then the world is talking about those who reject or ignore God, that changes things a lot. Now, if we're talking about those who have looked to God and said, no, I don't want anything to do with that, then when we says do not love the world, that's a totally different thing. And worldly means this, doing things without the consideration for knowing and doing God's will. See, that's what worldly means. That's the issue that we're having here. It's worldly when you don't consider God before you decide to do or not do something. And that's what worldly means. Now, the verse goes on. It says this. Actually, it says this in 1 John 2:16. For the world offers only a craving for physical pleasure, a craving for everything we see, and pride in our achievements and possessions. These are not from the Father, but are from this world. Now here again, it's not talking about specific items. It's not talking about music. It's not talking about movies. It's not talking about your TV. It's talking about these ideas. For the world offers a craving for physical pleasure, a craving for everything we see, achievements and possessions. These are not from the Father. Now, the three things it mentions there, physical pleasure, everything we see, achievement, and possessions, those things in and of themselves, again, are totally okay. Physical pleasure is part of God's plan. Everything we see, it's God's creation. Those are all things that are good. Achievements and possessions are totally fine. There's nothing wrong with achieving things in life. There's nothing wrong with having things. You don't have to be a hermit. You can own things. And that's totally okay. The problem is, when you read the verse, it looks different. It's a craving for physical pleasure. It's a craving for everything we see. It's pride in our achievements and possessions. You see, when we take those things and we become obsessed with them, and God is here, and then all of a sudden, physical pleasure, everything we see, achievements or possessions goes here, then we have a problem. Then we're lost. Then it's out of whack. We don't really know what's important anymore because we have a craving for physical pleasure. We have a craving for everything we see. When in and of itself, those things are totally fine. Those things are part of God's plan. Those things are good things. But when we take it too far, when from the heart comes evil, and we look at those things and we desire those things, another verse uses the word lust. Because lust is something that's not of God. Lust is something that means we're in the way, and we're elevating it above God and his impact in our lives. The world and its desires pass away, but whoever does the will of God lives forever. You see, that's what we're looking at today. We're looking at all of these things that we looked at these last few weeks, the music, the movies, the fame, and the fortune. We're looking at those things and what the world has to offer. And you can be where you want on either camp of the controversy. But what we need to know more importantly than that is, who do we choose to serve first? Do we serve the things? Do we serve the physical pleasure? Do we serve our achievements and our possessions? Do we just have to have everything we can get our hands on? Or do we know that God is more important than all those things? And we have to choose. Because you can't serve two masters. One either loves God or the world. And the things we've looked at these last few weeks, you either take those things and you elevate them above God, or you understand that they have a place down here. Not a place that's thrown away, not a place that's trashed, not a place that becomes lifestyle police for those who want to or do take part in those things, but instead to realize that God is most important and that these things have their place. And there is a time when these need to go away and you focus on God first. Because you have to assess yourself daily. Who are you serving? Are you serving God, or are you serving the stuff and the things and the world? We have to look at that differently. We have to understand that differently. Now, one of the other verses that's used quite a bit is during a prayer. When Jesus is on his way to the cross, he decides that he's going to pray, and he starts praying. And if you remember the story, he prayed so hard that he sweat blood. It was a really monumental moment where Jesus just broke down and prayed for the people that he was with and for the world that he was in. And some of the things that he said were this. He said, I have given them your word, and the world has hated them. For they are not of the world any more than I am of the world. My prayer is not that you take them out of the world, but that you protect them from the evil one. Now, see, there's a lot of different things there. There's a lot of stuff to look at. He says, first of all, I have given them your word. That's why he was here. He wants us to read the Bible and know it. If we know it, we can make decisions better because we go back to the Bible before we go to the world, because God gave us his word in the form of the Bible. He said he's given them the word, and the world has hated them because of it. So get ready. Persecution's coming, because our ideas, our views, our life, our worldview is changed if we base it on God's word. We base it on the Bible. It looks different to people. It's hard to understand. For they are not of the world any more than I am of the world. My prayer is not that you take them out of the world, but that you protect them from the evil one. Now that just seems so weird, right? Because here's Jesus with a direct connection to God. He has the ability to put an end to it all and say, take me out of here, take them out of here. Let's not deal with this anymore. Let's start over. But instead of removing the problem from our lives, moving Satan from our lives, removing sin from our lives, he says, I pray for them that you take them out of the world, but that you would not take them out of the world, but that you would protect them from the evil one. He knew what was going to happen. He knew where we were going. He knew the struggles that we were going with. And he prayed for us to be protected during them, not to be removed from them completely. It's a different take when you look at it. You look at it and you go, okay, so I'm in this world. How do I partake in it? And how do I guard myself from it too? Because he's saying here that the evil one will attack. And we have to be ready for that. He's praying for our protection, but we also have to be ready to go, because it's going to hit us at one point or another. They are not of the world, even as I am not of it. Sanctify them by truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, I have sent them into the world. Now that changes things a lot. If you read that last verse there, as you sent me into the world, I have sent them into the world. Now, if you compare that to the verse that we looked, or the words that we looked at earlier, in the world but not of the world, that's different, right? He's saying that we're sent. If you look at the verse, as you sent me into the world, I have sent them into the world. That's a totally different calling. Us being sent into the world. See, again, we get Brian's camp and we put up the fences and we put up the walls. And we hunker down and we try not to move. We try not to be swayed by the evil that's in the world. And we throw things away and we cast this aside and we say, that's no good. But this verse says something different. As you sent me into the world, Jesus is saying, I have sent them into the world. That's different. So we could take this phrase and we can change it. In the world, but not of the world, I think is a good statement, but I think it's used inappropriately or not quite understood. So after reading that previous verse, I think a better way to acknowledge this here is to say it this way. Not of the world, but sent into the world. We're sent. You see, we have the best news. We have the best information. We have the best God. We have the only God. And we have exactly what those who are in the world who don't know him need. And that's good news. That's the fact that his son went to the cross to die for each and every single one of us so that we could be sent into this world, that we could talk to people, that instead of throwing up fences and instead of throwing up walls, we can have communication with people that says, I care about you and I care about what you're doing, rather than demonize the things that they're doing or demonize the things that we think are bad. Because that's not what's important. The verse didn't say, and make sure You tell everybody, don't drink, don't dance, don't listen to rock and roll. It didn't say that. It said, just as I was sent, Jesus was sent. Jesus was sent to show the world, to be a sacrifice, to die for our sins. We are also sent to tell people about the amazingness that is Jesus and his sacrifice, not about the things that they're doing, not telling them to stop doing this or that, but instead to show them who Jesus is and how he can change their lives. We need to point people to Christ, not away from things or sin. It's not our job to be lifestyle police. It's not our job to start focusing on what someone is or isn't doing. Our job is to be sent into the world. It's to go out and reach those who don't know who Christ is. And if they drink, if they dance, if they go to rock and roll concerts, whatever it is that you think is or isn't a good thing for them, that doesn't matter. I care more about people coming through the doors in here to find Jesus every single Sunday instead of the stuff that they're doing. I'm not perfect. We're not perfect. Jesus is perfect. And for that reason, when people come here, we can talk to them about who Jesus is. And we can stop using the worldly things as a weapon. We need to start talking to people about who Jesus is rather than talking to people about how they need to change. Because Jesus is who changed me. It wasn't somebody else that told me to stop doing this or stop doing that. In fact, when you say that to people, it shuts them down. They just don't want to talk to you anymore. But instead, we need to jump straight to the information, straight to the fact that Jesus is who he said he is. And that your life will change if you decide to follow him. Those things that may or may not be bad in your life because you've put too much emphasis on them and you've put them over God, those things God will deal with, not us. And as a church, I'm happy that Iron Ridge is a people that welcomes people in and tells them about who Jesus is first, tells them about why it's important to follow him, tells them why it's important to become a Christ follower before we tell people to stop doing this or stop doing that. Pop culture, culture in general, you're going to deal with it the rest of your life. It's always changing. There'll always be something new. There'll always be something to demonize. And we need to step back and we need to take a moment and realize that whether or not we demonize something shouldn't supersede the fact that we tell somebody who Jesus is. We need to welcome people into our lives so that we can tell them about Jesus. We need to welcome them so we can talk to them on the same level as them and not condemn them for the way that they are. It's kind of the overarching message of this whole series. There's a lot of controversy out there. There's a lot of pop culture out there. But one thing that we can all get behind, one thing that we can all agree upon is that Jesus died for you and me and all the people that are doing the things that we may or may not think they should or shouldn't. He died for every single person. And we need to be sent to talk to them, not about the way that they live, but about the way that they can live forever if they accept Jesus Christ. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for the sacrifice of your Son. And I pray as we go forward in life, as we experience pop culture, as we experience culture on many, many different levels, that we first and foremost seek those who need you and tell them about you. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for what you've done for us. I pray as we go forward, our lives will be marked by your love and grace that we can show to other people. In Jesus' name.